sports fans, this is Robert with WTP Sports, ready to talk some Big Ten Conference 2026 preseason rankings. We're going to be ranking all 18 of the Big Ten teams before the season starts. We're going to start from 18 all the way to 1. And I know everybody is going to be excited to see who we got at number 1 or who we may even have in our top 5. But I'm telling you now, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. I got my man post-game sports with me this morning. How you feeling post-game?
I feel marvelous on this Saturday morning, Mr. Brown. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic. I don't know what it had a glitch in there somewhere. Oh man,
I,
let me see. Let me see if I can get this fixed.
yeah, I can hear you. Your audio is
All right,
good.
we good. Okay, cool. All right. Hmm. All right. Sorry for those technical difficulties, everybody out there. What's up, SEC Sean? What's up, Wiz? Thanks for joining us in the chat and everybody else that's out there. Please put your name in there so that we know you in the house with us. Make sure you like and subscribe. And thank you for joining us this morning. Post game, let's get right on into who we got in the in this Big Ten rankings. We're going to start with the teams that are from 18 down to 15 and give our thoughts on those teams. At 18, we got Purdue. We got Purdue coming in the basement. Absolutely last, and I think that's been where they've been the last few seasons. I think one season they didn't win not one single game. And then we got Rutgers at 17. Rutgers a few years ago had a really good running game, had a really nice team, had a really good bowl victory in 2024. So we'll talk a little bit about them. Then we got Northwestern at 16, who we all know Northwestern is one of those academic schools, but every now and then, especially when they have Fitzgerald as their coach, I think that's his name, they had some really good ball teams. And we also got Michigan State. One of the teams that we normally expect to be up in at least the top 10 are down at 15. What's your thoughts on these 4 teams? And are they just teams that help other teams in the Power Four find good, experienced players?
Yes. I do think when you look at a team like Purdue, they lost their starting kicker, who was a heck of a kicker. And you know the talent disparity amongst these teams when you talk about the top tier teams in the Big Ten and ultimately in the country is astounding. But I think teams like Rutgers, KJ Duff is definitely a first round NFL talent at the wide receiver position. A guy 6'6" shouldn't be able to move like that. So KJ Duff is definitely going to be one of the better players in the country this upcoming season. But Purdue, I don't expect much from Purdue this year. Like you said, a lot of their good players get poached. You think about Nitro Tuggle transferring out of Purdue. Northwestern, I do like their coach. I do think he can rebuild that program and get it back to where it once was. Maybe not a contender with the big boys of the Big Ten, the IUs, the Oregons, Ohio States, Michigans, and teams like that. But I think Northwestern is a program that's being rebuilt and being rebuilt correctly. Michigan State, that's another team with a good coach. I do think they lost a few players in the portal. We talk about 8 guys like Aiden Childs and the wide receiver that went to IU, Nick Marsh. Those are some big time players that they lost. So I don't expect much from these teams. I think they'll definitely be at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, when I think about Purdue, I think about the fact that they've become more of a basketball school than a football school here lately. And I think that's what's been able to make Purdue survive. And of course, Wiz is saying Purdue and Michigan State are two bottom dwellers in this conference. And you would think that they would be much better, especially being in the Midwest, being able to get some of that Midwest talent. But they're battling against some other great teams like Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State to get some of those that Midwest talent. For Rutgers, I feel like, man, they're up in the East Coast, and there's not a whole lot of great football players coming out of that area. There are some, but not to the extent that you find them in the Midwest or down south or even out west in Cali and states like that. Northwestern, if they need to take a page out of Vanderbilt's book, they might have an opportunity to at least be competitive, be one of those really good academic schools that can also find some really good athletes who really value academics and be one of those teams that can be good as well. Michigan State, like Will said, they are in trouble because they got Big Brother Michigan there, and they have a lot of schools in the Midwest that are just more dominant when it comes to football than they are. So they're going to be one of those schools that continue to get poached. We see Nick Marsh go over to Indiana, and we're just going to probably see a lot more of that. I think the tight end from Michigan State ended up going to Texas, and he's going to be an integral part at Texas. So those schools are going to probably be schools that are basketball schools when you talk about Purdue and Michigan State, but somehow they're going to have to find a good football program if they're going to stay afloat in this college football landscape.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm used to teams like Purdue and Michigan State being atop of the rankings in the Big Ten. So these are different times.
Yeah, I mean, throughout their history, we've seen them pull off some great upsets. Will that ever happen again? I don't know, man. For right now, the way the landscape of college football is, I would say no to them pulling off any of those upsets like we've seen them pull off in the past. Let's look at 14 through 11. We got Maryland at 14, a really, really good freshman quarterback last year. Coming into his second year, we expect big things out of him. Wisconsin at 13. Wisconsin has been an underperforming team, but they've dealt with a lot of injuries, and they dealt with some really tough scheduling the last few years. We'll get our thoughts on them. Number 12, Nebraska, came over to the Big Ten a few years ago and never really has lived up to the hype. They had one really good season. They had Ohio State on the ropes with an opportunity to beat them, but just could not gain that short yardage in order to pull out that victory. And then Minnesota rowed a boat. Can they get into the top 10? We got them at 11 here on our board. What's your thoughts on these four teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think out of these four teams, I'm highest on Minnesota, and that's simply because of their quarterback, Drake Lindsay, who got into a little bit of trouble this offseason. But this is a kid from Arkansas, a 6'5", 230-pound quarterback. He's been getting a lot of hype and buzz amongst the NFL scouts as of late, and I understand why, because when he's on, man, he throws a pretty and accurate ball down the field. Some of his highlights last season, some of the throws he was able to make, man, it was just elite. And I really like Drake Lindsay out of all these quarterbacks in this tier of the Big Ten rankings. Now, as far as the other teams, Nebraska, I don't have much faith in Nebraska. I think they'll be one of the bottom tier teams, barely making it into that middle lump of teams where we have them with Minnesota and Wisconsin and Maryland. I just don't. I don't like Nebraska in the moves they've been making. But as far as Wisconsin goes, this is a big year for their coach. I think their defense is going to be solid. But the question for Wisconsin is if that offense can do anything. Can they find an identity? Can they get back to that running identity that Wisconsin had for so many years? Some really great running backs to come out of the University of Wisconsin. As far as Maryland, It's all going to come down to their quarterback. I don't expect Maryland to do much this season. I think they'll definitely be a bottom tier team, but their quarterback is a quarterback to watch for sure.
Yeah, I feel like these four teams are teams that probably need to be thinking about what they're going to do going forward. I mean, you got the coach at Nebraska who really hasn't lived up to the hype after coming back from the NFL after spending a couple of years at Baylor before he went to the NFL. He really hasn't gotten Nebraska where they need to be. Nebraska, I think, is a program that is thinking about leaving the Big Ten where they haven't had this success and going back to the Big 12. I think that would be a good move for them because I think if they go there, they could probably compete with those teams that's in the Big 12 and be up near the top. And then when you look at Wisconsin, a team who has had dominant running games for so many years, some of the greatest running backs we've ever witnessed in college football, and they just have not been able to get the trenches right the way they have in the past. If you think about some of the big name defensive guys they've had in the past, or rushing the quarterback or at defensive tackle, they just aren't getting those players anymore. Now, you couple that with all the injuries they have to some of their good players, maybe they could have been better the last couple of years, but that hasn't fared so well. And I'm a strong believer that they need to move on from their head coach after this year if he doesn't fare well or show any signs that this program is going to get back towards the top. Maryland is Maryland. They're a basketball school too. And I went to the Maryland-Texas game years ago, and Maryland beat Texas that year. But Maryland is just one of those schools where if you look at where they're located, it's really all about basketball in that area. It's really not a football producing place, even though they have produced some really, really good football players in that Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Maryland area. They just tend to go to some of these bigger schools, especially some of the defensive linemen that they have in those areas. At number 10, we're going with UCLA. UCLA was a team last year that showed some promise towards the back end of the season. They fired their head coach, brought in the interim. He was able to get them going on the right track. What's your thoughts on UCLA? They got their quarterback returning, who had a lot of controversy the season before, and the move that he made or his father was making. What do you think about UCLA? Can they be one of those teams that could possibly get in the top 7?
Let me ask you a quick question before I tackle UCLA. How many wins do you think Luke Fickell needs to secure his job at Wisconsin?
Man, I think 7 can get him over the hump because they'll get a bowl game and probably they'll have a really good bowl opponent if they get the 7 wins. 8 would definitely secure for him, in my opinion, in this conference, especially because this conference is loaded, man, especially at the top.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I think UCLA is definitely one of those sleeper teams in the Big Ten conference. It's just so weird saying Big Ten and UCLA. But anyway, I think the quarterback Nico, I really like. The key for them is they're going to need wide receivers to step up this season. They hit the transfer portal really hard with their new head coach. And I think the key for this offense is going to be running back Wayne Knight, the transfer from James Madison, who went over a band last year in rushing. So this offense looks really, really good. As far as the defense, same thing. A lot of transfer portal additions. Can they put it all together before the season starts? And jail, we'll see about that. But I think UCLA is a team that's going to upset a couple of the big boys in the Big Ten, especially when you factor in the traveling from the Midwest out to the West Coast. I think UCLA has potential to trip up a team or two, but I don't see them contending for the Big Ten championship this season.
Yeah, I don't see them contending for the Big Ten championship either. But all those teams that we named below them, I think if they play any of them, they can beat any of them teams for sure. And that can help them in their record and their pursuit to get better. UCLA is one of those schools that, although they're a private school and they don't have a whole lot of money coming through there from donors and stuff like that, which you would think that they would. Being UCLA and the great rich history they've had in basketball, you would think that they would have some money out there for the football program. But I think their coach and that staff and the AD there, they understand and listen. Schools like James Madison, Purdue, I'm not Purdue, Tulane, those group of four schools have some really talented, experienced football players. And if they continue to go that route and start plucking some of them players from here, there, and everywhere, they can be one of those Big Ten schools that we expect UCLA to be and be up in the top five every year, battling with the likes of Oregon, Ohio State, USC, Michigan, Indiana, who we never would thought would be in that picture, but they are now. And I think that they can be one of those teams that can definitely get in the top seven, because I feel like the teams that we're about to name next, they can definitely beat some of those teams too, the next two or three that we're about to mention. And we're going to move on now to number 9, Illinois. What's your thoughts on Illinois? I know Illinois was one of your favorites to win this conference last year, and they had really had a really talented and experienced team. They just ran into some juggernauts, and I think when Indiana whipped up on them, that sort of might have beat their confidence up. What do you think about Illinois this year? We got them in at number 9.
Yeah, Rob, I thought it's funny. I thought Illinois coming into the season last year was going to be what Indiana ended up being because of all the experience. You talk about a good head coach, the experience of their players, a solid running game, solid quarterback, solid defense. I thought Illinois was going to be a little bit better than what they were. Still a solid team in the Big Ten, but definitely not in contention to win it all. But I mean, Illinois this season is going to be about Caden Hauser at the quarterback position and the transfer portal additions they were able to get on defense. They got some veterans coming back as far as the defensive back position is concerned. I think Illinois is going to be a really solid team. Are they going to compete for the Big Ten crown? No, but I think they'll definitely be in the middle tier, somewhere around 9-4, 8-5, as my pop just said in the chat. All right, good morning, Pop. They'll definitely be around there. They'll be a dangerous team, but they won't compete for a Big Ten title this year.
Yeah, I think this Illinois team has a chance to really reevaluate things and say to themselves, okay, we might not be one of the better teams in this conference, but we have an opportunity to play some really good football teams with an opportunity, especially when they come to Champaign, Illinois, to really give them a really good contest and possibly upset them, especially when you think about somebody like if they have to play Michigan or if they have to play USC. Teams like that they really got a physical style of play, because we've seen how physical they played USC last year. They were so ultra physical that USC wasn't ready for that, and they were able to beat USC, I believe, last year, or at least take them down to the brink of that fourth quarter. I think Illinois understands their position in this conference, and they're going to be a good, solid team like we want to see every year, year in and year out. At number 8, we got Washington. Give me your thoughts on Washington, the quarterback. Can he possibly lead them to some victories to where, because I think they play every team on that West Coast, being Oregon, USC, and UCLA. Can you see this Washington team possibly upsetting the likes of USC and Oregon?
They'll definitely get an upset or two. Against who? I'm not sure. USC, I like them. I think they have a better chance to beat USC than they do Oregon this year. Demond Williams is a guy who a lot of people focus on his rushing ability at the quarterback position, and rightfully so. Rob, he's electric, but he can drop some dimes in a bucket too. Wide receiver Roebuck, his wide receiver, that guy's returning. I expect him to have a big season. But the key addition in the portal for me when it comes to the Washington Huskies is going to be Jaden Lamar from Oregon. This is a guy I really liked out of high school, flirted with Notre Dame, decommitted from Notre Dame with the Oregon. Now he's at Washington. And I think he's a versatile back who can make plays, and they're going to need him this season to be productive if Washington is going to compete for a playoff spot and or the top 3 or 4 seed in the Big Ten. I don't think they make it all the way up there, but they definitely got some talented pieces. I don't see them beating Oregon at all. I think Oregon's the cream of the crop when we talk about the Big Ten conference right now, at least coming into the season. But Jaden Lamar, Demond Williams, they definitely got to make some plays this year for that Husky team.
Yeah, I really like Williams at the quarterback position. I think if he is able to not have a whole bunch of mistakes, he can take care of the football. They can be in every game. I think their defense last year they had a really solid defense. I like their defense, and I think their defense will have a chance to um, be decent again this year to the where they can keep teams from blowing them out early and they could be in some games. And then with a guy like Williams and the talent he's going to have around him, they could possibly be in some games and pull off some upsets. I really like this Washington team. We got them at number 8. I just feel like the teams we got ahead of them may have a little bit more talent and a little bit more experience going forward, and maybe a little bit more physical than they are. That's been a huge knock on Washington in the past, especially under Kellen DeBoer, that they just weren't as physical as they were back when they made that run into the college football playoffs a few years ago when they played Alabama, I believe it was, um, in the semifinals. But I like Washington. I think they're going to be one of the top 8 teams in this conference. I'm just anxious to see if maybe they can pull an upset or two. And coming in at 7, and I really want to get your thoughts on this team because they are going in with a new coach. They're going in with a bunch of transfer players from Iowa State. At 7, we got Penn State. Penn State could be one of those teams that some people may not be certain about because of the fact that they got a new coach and a whole bunch of new additions from Iowa State. What's your thoughts on Penn State, and can Penn State be a top 10 team in this? A top 5 team in this conference?
Well, you got Matt Campbell coming over, and then he brings a whole lot of transfers with him from Iowa State. I mean, was it Iowa State or Arizona State?
Iowa State.
Iowa State. Yeah, okay. So I think the key here is going to be anytime you piece together a team with transfers, and I know they were all together at Iowa State. Penn State lost a lot of talent that transferred out when they lost Franklin, but they kept a couple guys. And again, I getting those guys from Iowa State. I think Penn State can be a really dangerous team. And it's all going to start with Rocco Beck. Rocco Beck is a gamer. That dude plays ball. He's really competitive, and I like his style of play. I think he has a lot of heart. I think people are counting out this Penn State team. I think they can be a top 5 team, somewhere around there, 5, 6, 7. I think that's where they're ultimately finished. But it all depends on how quickly they gel and put it all together and get adjust to the Big Ten conference, because the Big Ten and Big 12 are a lot different when you talk about style of play. So I'm fascinated to see how quick they are able to adjust to the Big Ten conference and that physical style of football. But Rocco Beck is a guy you need to watch and keep your eye on, because that dude is a gamer.
Yeah, you mentioned how fast will it or how long will it take Penn State to adjust to the style of play of the Big Ten, and I feel like their head coach. And I said this on many podcasts before now that I think he is the ideal coach to be in the Big Ten because the Big Ten style of play is the style of play that he had at Iowa State in the Big 12. He wants to run the football. He wants to use his tight ends. And whenever you have a quarterback like Rocco Beck, who is a gamer, like you said, he is going to be able to make some plays. They've always had solid wide receivers, guys who came in as maybe a 3-star, maybe even a 2-star, and Matt Campbell was able to get the maximum production out of these guys. I hated when Texas had to play Iowa State, especially when they had to go to Ames, Iowa. These Big Ten schools, when you got to go to Ames, Iowa, I'm telling you right now, you are going to be in for a dog fight because, I mean, I'm talking about. They going to Penn State. I'm thinking about Iowa State so bad. I'm thinking about them so bad. I'm getting confused. Listen, I think Matt Campbell in Happy Valley, Penn State is going to bring the same kind of atmosphere that you will have at Ames, Iowa. I like this Penn State team. And like SEC Sean said, their schedule is going to be exactly what they need in order to make it at least look like they're one of the better teams in the country. At number 7, we got Penn State. I like this team. I'm anxious to see how well they play because last year they didn't play so well with all that talent they had. In comes Matt Campbell. Can he get these guys going in the right direction? He pulled in maybe 30 plus players from Iowa State. So I don't expect much of a drop off. I think Penn State will be right up there in the mix again this year, possibly vying for a chance to make it to the college football playoffs because their schedule is really, really, really weak. At 6, we got Iowa. Iowa, to me, is one of the better teams in this conference, especially when you talk about them defensively. They're probably going to have a top 10 defense. What's your thoughts on Iowa, and can Iowa be one of those teams to finally make it to the college football playoffs out of this Big Ten conference?
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way to finish better than expected and flirt with that college football playoff. The thing about Iowa is they're going to have to find some kind of production in the passing game, man. They were last in passing in FBS, if not last, definitely one of the bottom teams. But the key to this team is going to be their ability to run the ball. And then quarterback position, who's going to win that quarterback battle they got in Iowa? That's going to be key. But they have to find something in the passing game. They're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to play defense. I like Iowa a lot, and I think they can upset a few teams that they're not expected to beat. That's a really tough style of football to play in 2026, 2027. So I like this Iowa team. Again, the key, they got to find something in the passing game, just something, anything. If they can do that, I think this could be a team that's better than a lot of people expect. I know a lot of people like Iowa, but I don't think a lot of people have them in that tier with Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. But if they can find some passing game, if they can just anything, they don't even need to be a team that passes for 500 yards, 400 yards. They can just be solid in a passing game. I like Iowa a lot because they lost a lot of close games last year against some of these elite teams that could have went any way. And if they would have won one or two of those games, they would have been a playoff team, Rob.
Yeah, I like this Iowa team. I think they're going to come in with one of the top 10 defenses in the country, which is going to keep them in every single game. And we all know how difficult it is to go and travel to Iowa to play this team. I agree with you. We know they're going to be able to run the football. We know they're going to have a really good offensive line, some really good tight ends. but can they get the ball into some of their wide receivers' hands to make some plays for them and keep teams from being able to stack the box or being able to double their tight ends, especially on those possessions where you get a couple of 3rd and 5s, 3rd and 4s, where you usually like to go to your tight end if you're an Iowa State, I mean, an Iowa quarterback. I hope that the quarterback who played in that bowl game last year from out of Olentangy Orange ends up winning his job and is the starting quarterback for them. I just feel like Iowa is one of those teams in the Big Ten that you have to kick that door down and finally make it to the college football playoffs, or at least be up in there in the top 10. Because even when they made it to the championship game against Michigan the year that Michigan won the title, Iowa really was not a good offensive football team. And if you can't get your offense rolling, eventually these really good teams in the Big Ten will eventually wear you down and eventually score some points and beat you. They got to be able to score some points themselves and extend drives and allow their defense to get the kind of rest that it needs in order to always be functioning at their optimum. I like this Iowa team. I think where we got them at 6 is probably where they're going to actually finish in this conference at the end of the season. I don't think they're going to make it to the college football playoffs. At number 5, we got another very similar team to Iowa. Are they going to be able to kick down the door and make it into the college football playoffs? At number 5, we got I missed that one. We got USC. USC similar in to Iowa, and they haven't made it to the college football playoffs. But offensively, they've been a juggernaut, but defensively, they've been not so good. What's your thoughts on this USC team, and can they be one of the teams to finally make it to the college football playoffs out of the Big Ten?
Well, this is going to be a huge season for Lincoln Riley, in my opinion, Rob. I think he has to get the job done. He's been at USC for like 4 or 5 years now, if I'm not mistaken. They want to be a playoff team. And I think the Big Ten is going to be tough for them to navigate. I'm one of those guys who think, a West Coast team coming out to the Midwest in late October, early November, that's a really tough ask in my opinion. But I think the strength of USC is definitely going to be that offensive line. I mean, Page is one of the best tackles in America, if not the best. Elijah Page, tackle. I really liked him coming out of high school. I think he's going to be a stud and definitely be a top pick in the NFL draft next year. But USC, the offensive and defensive line should be strengths for this team. I think that's the way they're building their program to compete in the Big Ten. I think they'll be an extremely competitive team in the Big Ten this year. Is it enough to secure a playoff spot? I think they'll be just on the outside looking in. I think they'll finish 9-3-ish. Really good season. Jaden Maiava is one of the better quarterbacks in America. They just need one of those wide receivers to step up, if not one, multiple, because they lost a lot to the NFL draft with Makai Lemon and Big Lang entering the draft and being selected in the earlier rounds. So I like this USC team. Can they compete for a Big Ten title or a playoff spot? I think they'll be just on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think USC is going to be on the outside looking in. I really do like the addition of Gary Patterson as the defensive coordinator. I think he is going to be a genius for them, and he's going to allow them to be a much better defensive football team because we haven't seen them defensively be as good as they need to be, especially when you come to these physical Big Ten schools who want to smack you in your mouth every down. I think they're going to get a lot more physical because Gary Patterson is that kind of coach too, and he brings a scheme that I think is one of the better schemes in college football when you go with that three high safety, especially if they can contain you and not have to bring another safety down in the box to stop the run. If they're able to do that, then they're going to USC is going to be a really tough team. I think offensively they're going to be really solid. Like you said, one of those wide receivers, one of those young guys is going to have to step up for the quarterback, who I think is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the country. We talked a lot about quarterbacks throughout college football, and there's so many of these guys that it's going to be so exciting to watch them play. But if Lincoln Riley does not fare as well as he needs to, he's going to have to finish at least 9-3. 8-4 is not going to cut it. They eventually are going to move on from him. And if Gary Patterson puts out a good product defensively, I wouldn't be surprised if they rolled him into that position if they decided to get away from Lincoln Riley, because I think there's enough great offensive minds out there that if Gary Patterson became the head coach, he could get a really good offensive mind out there that will come and would love to be the offensive coordinator at USC. I'm anxious to see how well they play because I think they got everybody on the West Coast that they have to play. They got to play Oregon, they got to play Washington, and I believe they have to play UCLA as well. They got to at least come out of that thing 2-1. They cannot come out of it 1-2. Otherwise, Lincoln Riley's going to be on one of those hot seats. Coming in at number 4, we got the Michigan Wolverines. Shout out to our man Parlay Poe of the Blitzburg podcast. Huge Michigan fan. What's your thoughts on Michigan? Can Michigan get past all of the noise that they've had the last couple of years and rebuild this program with Cal Whittingham and be the Michigan that we all love seeing on Saturdays when it comes college football season?
Yeah, that's the question. That's the big question. Because I think, the what this program has been through, I think Kyle Whittingham is the perfect man to kind of stabilize the program, turn all that noise around, put them in a good position to be just what they've been, a winning program throughout history. I think Kyle Whittingham being married to Bryce Underwood, the starting quarterback, is a really great thing because we've talked about it in the past on this podcast. Kyle Whittingham is known for having athletic quarterback play, guys who can really hurt you in the run game, which sets up the pass. I think Bryce Underwood in this system is going to have his breakout year. I think that the key on defense for the Michigan Wolverines is going to be John Henry Daly. Man, that dude can really rush the passer. And the thing I like about John Henry Daly is for his size at 6'4", maybe 250, 260, he implements a spin move that I normally see on smaller rushers, but he executes it to a T. And he had double-digit sacks last year. I expect him, if healthy, I think he's coming off Achilles, which all reports suggest he'll be healthy and ready to go for the season. But man, I think this is a guy who can get double-digit sacks once again. Owusu Boateng at the linebacker position is going to be key for Michigan as well. They bring back some DBs. I think this is a Michigan team, Rob, that can compete. Maybe not at the top elite tier of the Big Ten, but maybe just right there, right outside of that. Maybe they even upset Ohio State this year. I don't know. We know that rivalry game can go any way. One of the biggest rivalries in history. But I like Michigan a lot. I think Kyle Whittingham is the man for the job. I can see him turning this program around pronto. I don't think he's interested in the rebuild and this taking years. He doesn't have time for that. I think they're getting to work right now, ASAP, and they're going to try to compete in this Big Ten for the Big Ten title this year. I don't think they win the Big Ten title, but I think they're extremely competitive right there, maybe just on the cusp of a playoff bid.
Yeah, like you and like your father Wiz, I think this was a fantastic hire. Having Michigan get Cal Whittingham, I really feel like this team has an opportunity to really turn the corner and be one of the better teams in the Big Ten. That was right on the cusp of the college football playoffs last year. Um, was right on the outside looking in with the BYU's, the Texas, and themselves and USC. I think this team has an opportunity to get back to that Michigan identity that we've seen without all of the noise that was going on that campus with the hardball situation and then with the coach they had last year. I really feel like Michigan is going in the right direction. They're doing really good recruiting out of high school. They're doing really good in the transfer portal. And I feel like Cal Whittingham is one of those coaches who, just like Matt Campbell, is a perfect fit for the Big Ten because they come with a physical style of football that is conducive to what they do in the Big Ten. You want to run the football, you want to be able to play good, solid defense and be physical. But I agree with you. He has been one of those coaches who loves mobile quarterbacks who have the ability to be dual threat guys. We've seen it with Huntley a few years ago. We would have seen it with Cam Rising had he been able to stay healthy. And I think now he has Underwood, who came out as the number one quarterback a year ago. I think under his tutelage and under the quarterback coach that they got there in Michigan now, he'll be able to really rise. Now, he got some serious competition that's going to push him. And if he invites that competition and he takes it on head on, he can become a much better football player. I think down the stretch, outside of that Texas game, he started to protect the football a little bit more. And I think if he can do that, if he can protect the football and use his athleticism and make the throws that he needs to make, especially those throws that he can make down the field, his intermediate stuff is still needs some work. But his long ball, he can get the ball down there. And I think they can abandon making sure that they get the ball to Marsh. They got to make sure that guy gets touches, man, because he can be electric for them. And I think if they could cut down on their drop passes, because I think they might have led the country in drop passes last year, if they can fix that issue, they could be one of the really good teams vying for a chance to possibly get in the college football playoffs. Because I think there's a really good chance for 4 teams from the Big Ten to get in. But if you got 3 losses, man, it really hurts your chances. Even though I think eventually a 3-loss team from either the SEC or the Big Ten is going to get into this college football playoffs. Hopefully it can be Michigan. At number 3, we got Indiana, the defending champions. We know what they're going to bring to the table in terms of discipline, in terms of paying attention to detail. They have a really good football coach. And I'm anxious to see how long he's going to stay at Indiana. I don't know that he will go anywhere else in the country to coach because he's already getting top dollar as a college coach. Only other place I can see him going is to the NFL. If Indiana does really, really good this year, makes the college football playoffs, can you see Cignetti maybe moving on to the NFL? And what's your thoughts on this Indiana team and their possible chance to defend their title?
Ooh, what if Alabama comes knocking?
Man, yeah, because he was up under that Saban wing, so possible.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know if Signetti and maybe you've heard something, I don't know. But I don't know if he's interested in the NFL. he doesn't strike me as being interested in the NFL. Maybe so. I don't know that for sure, but just from the outside looking in, he doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. I think he's a college guy. If Alabama was to become vacant, I think that's a school that may be able to poach him from Indiana. But I don't know. He's in a really good situation. They got a lot of money flowing at IU nowadays, which you need to compete in the NIL era. But I disagree, SEC Shine. I don't think buyouts have ever stopped the team from getting rid of a coach if they want to get rid of a coach, even though that's a lot of money, man. But I like this Indiana team. I think they're definitely in contention to win the Big Ten title for a second year in a row. They went undefeated 13-0. They haven't lost, may I add, since the last 2024's playoffs against Notre Dame. It's the last loss that they had. I think that getting the quarterback from TCU and Hoover, I think that was a big deal, a bigger deal than people let on, man, because you got to look at what Cignetti has been able to do with his last two transfer quarterbacks and Mendoza and Rourke. Those guys, their QB ratings went up over 40%. So I think he'll be able to do the same thing with Hoover. I like their style of offense. You think about Nick Marsh and Charlie Becker. I think this is a dynamic duel at the wide receiver position. And then them getting Turbo Richard from Boston College. They'll sort of have a committee at running back, but I really like that get. But for their style of play with Marsh and Becker, man, those RPOs, those quick passes, to the wide receiver, I think that fits Nick Marsh's style a lot. I think he's going to eat big this year and have a humongous season. I love this Indiana team. We know they're going to be good on defense. They bring back a lot of players on both sides of the ball. I think Indiana, I don't think this is a fad. I think they'll continue to be dominant, and I wouldn't be surprised if they won the Big Ten title outright this year.
Yeah, I love Cignetti and what he does with his program and his coaches and the attention to detail and the fact that these players are so freaking disciplined. They don't have a whole lot of turnovers. They don't have a whole lot of penalties. And if he can continue that with the new crop of players he got coming in from the transfer portal, I agree with you. I think he's going to take Hoover from where Hoover was at TCU, and we're going to see a Hoover that NFL scouts are probably going to salivate about because his quarterback rating is probably going to go through the roof. Plus, he has two unbelievable wide receivers on the outside. He's going to have a solid tight end. He's going to have a run game. He's going to have an offensive line that is not going to make mistakes. Whenever a team decides they're going to bring some kind of exotic pressure, his offensive line understands what they need to do to pick that stuff up and keep Hoover clean and allow him to be able to get the ball to these dynamic playmakers that he has on his team. This Indiana team is scary. I know we got them at number 3 behind two other teams in the Big Ten. But like you said, I would not be surprised if they won the Big Ten outright. And we got them at 3 simply because of what we see talent-wise on the other two teams. But they're not necessarily taking a back seat to either one of them teams. We just had to put them there because of what those other two teams have coming back as well. I really like Indiana. I think they're going to be a college football playoff team. And I think anytime a team like this, with discipline, with attention to detail, they could make really good, talented football teams look mediocre. And I think this is going to be a scary team come playoffs. And I don't know that I would want to see Indiana in the playoffs. At number two, we come in with the Ohio State Buckeyes, a team that has not won the Big Ten in quite some time. A team that we've expected to win it year in and year out, but they have not won the Big Ten title. What's your thoughts on Ohio State? And is Ohio State, and we know that they're very talented, but have they really lived up to their potential over the past decade, in your opinion?
I see why you asked that. Ohio State is a program who gets some really elite, talented football players, especially throughout the last 10 years, as you mentioned. I think I would like to see, I think even if you ask an Ohio State fan, they would like to see more success as far as winning championships. But Ohio State has been a super successful program over the last 10 years, no doubt about that. I like this team. I think I like last year's team a little better. And they probably peaked at the wrong time last year because throughout the regular season, they just looked dominant. It looked like nobody was going to be able to touch Ohio State, but that wasn't the case. It starts on that defensive side of the ball. For me, I expect Kenyatta Jackson to break out this year, coming off the edge and rushing the passer and really making plays. I think Devin Sanchez, I expect him to step up and have an amazing, unbelievable season. And then them going to the transfer portal and getting Earl Little, I think that was a huge piece. So it's going to be interesting to see how Matt Patricia has this defense going next year with them losing so many elite players to the NFL draft. And on the offensive side, Julian Saying, Bo Jackson, Jeremiah Smith, the best player in college football. That offense is going to be really interesting because now you enter a new offensive coordinator who like really likes to run the ball and feature his tight ends in the offense. So Ohio State has all the talent in the world. Yet again, I want to see that front four, that front seven with them losing so many players. But on the offensive side of the ball, I expect them to really run the ball with Bo Jackson and set up that play action. Chris Henry Jr., Jeremiah Smith, Ennis, guys like that to make a lot of plays this year. Ohio State is interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they went undefeated and won the Big Ten. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a loss or two.
Yeah, I like this Ohio State team, but I agree with you. The team that they had last year, I think, was a better team. And the reason why I asked you that question was we look at these Ohio State teams of the past and how they will go through the regular season dominating teams, but then they would always run into somebody a la Michigan for 4 years, you know what I'm saying? Or Alabama or Georgia and those teams or Clemson. And those teams did not bring home the bacon. And you would think to yourself, man, how could Ohio State have all of these great teams? And they've been one of the best programs in college football. Don't get me wrong, they have been that, but they have not come home with the hardware at the extent that you would expect them to. And I feel like this Ohio State program is probably going to be like that again this year. They're going to be really, really good. They possibly could go undefeated in uh, in the regular season, but I don't think they're going to win the national championship. They got some really, really talented players. We saw what Julian Sain did in year one. We expect him to be dynamite again in year two. They got the best player in college football in Jeremiah Smith. I don't know what they do at the other two wide receiver positions. I'm sure their tight end will be solid. They got a really great running back in Bo Jackson. I think defensively they're going to be really good. I'm anxious to see what Devin Sanchez does and what Earl Little does and what those other guys on the defensive front does, replacing the guys that went on to the NFL, especially at linebacker and then at that edge position from time to time with the player that went high in the draft. I just don't know if Ohio State is going to be one of those teams that win a national championship because they've had so many great teams in the past and they have not gotten there, even though they have won three in the last 25 years, which is really good because there are some teams out there that haven't won any. I just don't feel like they're going to be the team that's going to win the national championship. I think they're going to be a really good football team. They have two really tough contests. They got some other ones too, but they got two really tough ones. They got to go to Austin to play Texas, and then they got to play Oregon. I think they got Oregon at the crib, though. So if they could get past those two games, then they will probably shut my mouth when they're not winning the national title. But I don't think that they're going to win the national title. But I think they're going to be a really really good football team. I just think they're going to get tripped up somewhere because somebody eventually later on in the season is going to find out where their weakness is and they're going to exploit it and end up beating them, much like we see Indiana do in the championship game, and then we see Miami turn around and do in the college football playoffs. At number one, we got the Oregon Ducks. This team is freaking loaded. What's your thoughts on this Oregon Duck team? Will they be the team to eventually win the Big Ten? And do you think they can get rid of the stigma that they have that they cannot do it in the playoffs? Can this team take it off their shoulders and bring home a national championship?
That's the big question for Oregon this season, Rob, is can they come into the season with a whole lot of hype, but they fail and don't get the job done every single time. And it's like, am I gonna fall for that again? But I think it's different this year. I think Oregon is absolutely loaded. Now they promoted from within with their offensive and defensive coordinator, with their offensive defensive coordinator getting coaching jobs. So that's going to be something to watch. Is that a smooth transition, or does that hold them back? I don't know. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but I'm going to have my eye on that situation. I think it all starts and ends with Dante Moore at quarterback. I expect him to be an elite quarterback this year. I expect him to make a lot of plays. And guess what? His wide receivers are healthy this year. When you talk about DeCorian Moore and Evan Stewart and those guys, McClellan, and a couple of the transfer guys they got. I think they lose Sadiq in the draft at tight end. So what? They got elite tight ends on that roster still. And I think the tight ends are going to be in the position to make plays. Offensive line is going to be really good. But the thing that can separate Oregon from everybody else is no doubt that defensive line is elite across the board. Linebackers are good. DBs, you talk about going to get the safety in the transfer portal and Corey Perry. So I like this Oregon team. I think they'll definitely be in contention to be number one overall when those AP polls are released. I like Oregon to win the Big Ten this year. I think they're not going to be playing around. They have all the ingredients that you need to accomplish those goals. I'm really interested to see how they fare compared to an Ohio State and Indiana because they played Indiana really tough last year, but got the loss. But then the playoffs, they just got ripped apart. So I can't wait to see this Oregon team. I think they're definitely one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, I really like this Oregon team as well. I really feel like they got the most talent across the board of any team in the country, especially when you're talking about their starting 22 players or the projected started 22 players. I really feel like this Oregon team has a chance to be one of those teams that can go undefeated in the Big Ten, which we all know is very difficult to do, even though we've seen it done last year by Indiana. We've seen it done a few years ago by Michigan. I just feel like this Oregon team, if they can stay healthy, is probably going to be the best team in the country. And of course, time 18-188, you said it especially right. This Oregon team always looks good on paper, but then when it comes down to it, they always fold somewhere. And that's why we put the question on the table. Can they get over the hump and make it happen this year? Can they win the championship? Can they win the Natty? They've been close quite a few times, but have not gotten it done. I really feel like this year there's probably about 7 teams who are going to be really, really good this year, really, really talented, that can be vying for that national championship. Oregon is one of those. And if they can stay healthy at the wide receiver position and all those other key positions where they haven't been healthy, they could be one of the teams that I think can win this thing. And if I was a betting man, I would probably put my money on Oregon. I think they have the best quarterback in the country. I think they have the best wide receiver tandem in the country, even though Ohio State has the best wide receiver and the best college football player in the country. I think when you look at DeCorian Moore and you look at Evan Stewart, if they both can be healthy, you're looking at the best wide receiver core in the country. Tandem in the country, even though there's a lot of really, really good ones out there. Miami has one. Texas, I think, has one. There's some really, and yes, SEC shot. I dropped Texas again. I dropped my Texas Longhorns again in the conversation. But I really like Oregon, man, and I think they're really the team to beat when you look at what they got on paper. And I think their players on the defensive side of the ball understood what those Ohio State players did a few years ago when they won the national championship, that we should come back and give it one more run at it, because we have a complete team that could possibly bring a national title to Oregon. And I know Phil Knight is probably going to break the bank if they do. Any other thoughts on this Big Ten conference?
Yeah, man, I'm really interested to see how this conference shakes out. You think about Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State. Can any of those middling teams creep up in that tier? Your Michigans, your USC's, or maybe even the Penn State. It's going to be an interesting watch.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting because there's so many storylines in this Big Ten conference that we're going to be looking at. Of course, we're going to be looking at how does Cal Whittingham get this Michigan program turned around from what it went through the last couple of years. Can Matt Campbell get Penn State back on their winning ways? Can he get them to the point where he doesn't have the same being talked about him about they can't win the big one? Will he be able to come in a couple of years and beat the likes of the Ohio States and Michigans of the world, which Penn State under James Franklin wasn't able to do? Can Oregon get over the hump finally and win a national championship? Will Indiana continue its winning ways? Because some people think Indiana's going to take a step back. So it's all those storylines are out there, man, and I'm anxious to see how it's going to unfold. At time 188. I don't know. I don't know if the Patriots was one guard away from making it and winning the Super Bowl, but they had a really good chance because their defense was really solid. But I think that Seattle team, they just understood, man, that their defense was going to take over this game, and they did. Even though Will Campbell, he was looking horrible in that game, but he was a rookie. So I expect him to be better going forward. And yes, Ohio State does have a lot to prove. I feel like, and even though I'm not an Ohio State hater, I just got some friends who really throw Ohio State in my face a lot. And I'm like, dude, y'all have been a great program for decades. Y'all have been. But national championships don't match how great of a program y'all been over the last couple of years. And I think that they got a lot to prove this year because I don't think anybody will argue that they had the best team in college football last year, and they should have won the national championship, and they didn't. And they lost to Indiana and they lost to Miami, two teams that we thought they had better talent than last year. So I'm anxious to see what they got to prove this year and if they actually do it. I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the country, one of the better teams in the Big Ten. And I think that's going to be forever. I don't think they're ever going to fall off. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, that's it, man. Great talks this morning. We appreciate the chat. Thanks for rocking with us.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all. Go check us out on Patreon and on Spotify at WTP Sports News 2026. Also, go check out our website at WTPSportsNews.com. Tune in tomorrow morning. We'll be right back again at 9 a.m. And we might be talking about some of the really good scheduled football games next year between teams that are playing each other and they have top 10 offenses coupled with a top 10 defense. We'll look at some of those schedules and see who we think will win those matchups. So tune in tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we are out of here. We will catch you tomorrow. Peace.